Let's start with something uncomfortable. Right now, you probably believe you are in control of your life. You think you choose what to eat, when to work, what to think, who to trust, and how to react. But what if I told you something strange? Most of those decisions were already made before you even realized it. Your brain made them first. Then it simply told you the story afterward. And the scariest part? You didn't even notice. Think about this for a moment. Have you ever opened your phone for just 1 minute and suddenly 45 minutes disappear? You didn't plan it. You didn't decide it consciously. Something else inside your mind quietly took control. Or maybe you promised yourself, tomorrow I'll wake up early. Tomorrow I'll stop procrastinating. But tomorrow comes, and somehow nothing changes. Not because you're lazy, not because you lack discipline, but because the part of your brain that truly runs your behavior is not the part you think. Here's the truth most people never realize. Your conscious mind, the part you think is you, controls only a tiny fraction of your behavior. Some psychologists estimate it's around 5%. The other 95%, that's your subconscious brain. And it's running the show, quietly, automatically, every single day. This hidden system decides your habits, your reactions, your fears, your cravings, and even your motivation. Which means most people are not really living intentionally. They're simply running mental programs they never chose. Programs installed by childhood, by environment, by repeated habits, by emotional experiences they barely remember. Imagine your brain like a powerful computer. Your conscious mind is the keyboard. But your subconscious mind, that's the operating system. And here's the problem. You keep typing new commands. I'll wake up early. I'll stop scrolling. I'll focus on my goals. But if the operating system running underneath is programmed for comfort, distraction, and avoidance, your brain will override you every single time. That's why change feels so hard. That's why people repeat the same patterns for years. Not because they're weak, but because their brain is protecting familiar behavior, even when that behavior is harmful. And this is where things get even more interesting. Your brain doesn't actually care about success. It cares about survival and efficiency. So whenever possible, it tries to save energy. And the easiest way to save energy? Turn behaviors into automatic habits. Habits require almost no thinking, no mental effort, which is why you can brush your teeth, walk, or drive a familiar route without even realizing it. But the same system that creates helpful habits also creates destructive ones. Endless scrolling, overthinking, self-doubt, procrastination, negative self-talk. Your brain doesn't judge these patterns. It simply repeats what it has learned over and over and over again until it becomes automatic. And once something becomes automatic, it feels like that's just who you are. But here's the truth that can change everything. Those patterns are not your identity. They are programs, and programs can be rewritten. But first, you have to understand how your brain tricks you, because the mind has a few powerful psychological illusions that keep you stuck without you even realizing it. And once you see them, you can never unsee them again. Now that you understand something important, that most of your behavior is controlled automatically, let's talk about how your brain actually keeps control, because it doesn't do it in obvious ways. Your brain is far more subtle than that. It uses psychological shortcuts that feel normal, so normal that most people never question them. And one of the biggest tricks your brain uses is the dopamine loop. You've probably heard the word dopamine before. People call it the pleasure chemical. But dopamine is actually something much more powerful. It's the chemical that drives motivation and craving. Your brain releases dopamine when it expects a reward, not necessarily when you get the reward, but when you anticipate it. And modern technology understands this perfectly. Every notification, every like, every short video, every endless scroll is designed to trigger small bursts of dopamine. Your brain begins to associate these tiny rewards with comfort. And slowly, without realizing it, your brain learns something dangerous. It learns that quick stimulation is easier than meaningful effort. That's why you can spend an hour scrolling without noticing. But working on your goals for 20 minutes feels exhausting. It's not because you lack discipline. Your brain has simply been trained to chase easy dopamine. And once that system takes over, your focus starts shrinking. Deep work becomes harder. Patience disappears. And the brain starts choosing short-term pleasure over long-term growth. But dopamine isn't the only trick your brain uses. There's another powerful force controlling your behavior, and it's something every human brain is wired for: comfort. Your brain loves familiarity. It prefers the known over the unknown, even when the known situation is frustrating. That's why people stay in jobs they hate, stay in routines that drain them, stay in habits they promised themselves they would quit, because your brain interprets change as potential danger. Remember, your brain evolved thousands of years ago when survival meant avoiding risk. New territory could mean predators. New environments could mean danger. So your brain developed a rule. If something feels familiar, it must be safe, even if it's not helping you grow. This is why the moment you try to change something in your life, your brain quietly resists. You decide to start waking up early. Your brain whispers, just 5 more minutes. You decide to start exercising. Your brain says, you can start tomorrow. You decide to stop scrolling at night. Your brain suggests, one more video. And suddenly an hour passes. This isn't random. It's your brain trying to protect the comfort zone. The problem is, growth never happens inside comfort. Everything meaningful in life requires stepping into discomfort, learning new skills, building discipline, facing rejection, taking risks. But your brain's default setting is designed to avoid all of that, which means if you're not aware of this system, your life slowly becomes controlled by the easiest path available. And that's exactly what happens to most people. Days turn into weeks, weeks turn into years, and people wake up one day realizing they've been running on mental autopilot, doing what feels easy, avoiding what feels uncomfortable, never questioning the hidden patterns controlling their behavior. But the most powerful trick your brain uses is something even deeper than dopamine or comfort. It's the illusion of identity. Your brain starts convincing you that your habits are simply who you are. I'm just not a disciplined person. I'm not good at focusing. I've always been like this. But these statements are not facts. They're conclusions your brain created based on repeated behavior. And once your brain labels something as identity, changing it feels almost impossible. Because now it feels like you're trying to change yourself, not just a habit. But here's the breakthrough most people never realize. Your brain is not fixed. It's constantly rewiring itself. Every habit you repeat strengthens certain neural pathways, and every habit you change begins building new ones, which means the moment you start interrupting automatic patterns, you begin taking back control. But that raises the most important question. If your subconscious mind controls most of your behavior, how do you actually regain control of your brain? Because forcing willpower rarely works. Discipline alone isn't enough. To change behavior permanently, you need to understand how to reprogram your mind, and that's exactly what we're about to explore next. So now, the real question is this. If your brain has been quietly controlling your habits, reactions, and decisions, how do you take that control back? Because simply telling yourself to be disciplined rarely works. You've probably tried that already. You promise yourself you'll change. You feel motivated for a few days, and then somehow everything slowly slips back to the way it was. That's not a failure of motivation. It's a misunderstanding of how the brain actually changes. Real change doesn't happen through force. It happens through awareness and small rewiring steps. And the first step is something surprisingly simple. Notice the moment your brain goes into autopilot. Most people live their entire day reacting automatically. They wake up and reach for their phone without thinking. They feel stress and immediately escape into distraction. They feel boredom and instantly search for stimulation. But the moment you notice the pattern, something powerful happens. Awareness creates a small gap between impulse and action, and inside that tiny gap is your freedom. For example, imagine you're about to open social media. Normally, your brain just does it automatically. But if you pause for 2 seconds and ask yourself one question, why am I opening this right now? Suddenly, the automatic pattern breaks. You might realize you're bored, or stressed, or avoiding something important. That small moment of awareness is how you begin reclaiming control. The second step is understanding something powerful about habits. Your brain doesn't respond well to huge changes, but it adapts extremely well to tiny, consistent actions. Most people try to transform their life overnight. They decide they'll wake up at 5 a.m., exercise every day, work for hours without distraction, and completely change their routine. And the brain immediately resists, because the change feels too extreme. Instead, the smarter way to reprogram your brain is through micro shifts, not 1 hour of focus. Start with 10 minutes, not a full workout. Start with 5 push-ups, not quitting distraction forever. Start by delaying it for 5 minutes. These small changes might seem insignificant, but your brain begins learning something new. It learns that change is possible, and every time you repeat a new behavior, even a small one, you strengthen new neural pathways. Slowly, the new behavior becomes easier, then normal, then automatic. And that's when real transformation begins. But there's one more technique that makes this process far more powerful. And it's something high performers understand deeply. Environment shapes behavior more than motivation does. Most people try to control their mind while surrounded by distractions. Their phone is next to them. Notifications are constantly appearing. Entertainment is always one tap away, and they expect their brain to stay focused. But your brain naturally responds to what's around you. If junk food is in front of you, you'll crave it. If your phone is visible, you'll check it. If your workspace is chaotic, your mind feels chaotic, which means controlling your brain becomes much easier when you design your environment intentionally. Move distractions away. Create spaces dedicated to focus. Make the right behaviors easier to start. Suddenly, you're not constantly fighting your brain. You're working with it instead of against it. And this leads to one final realization that most people discover too late. You don't rise to the level of your motivation. You fall to the level of your mental systems. Your brain will always look for the easiest path available. So the real power comes from designing a life where the easiest path is the one that moves you forward. And when you begin doing this consistently, something fascinating starts to happen. The same brain that once kept you stuck starts helping you grow. Focus becomes easier. Discipline becomes natural. And the habits that once controlled you no longer have the same power. Because now you understand something most people never realize. Your brain is incredibly powerful, but it's also incredibly trainable. And once you learn how to guide it, instead of blindly obeying it, your life begins changing in ways you never expected. So the next time you catch yourself running on autopilot, pause for a moment. Notice the pattern, and remember something important. You are not your habits. You are not your impulses. You are the one who can choose what happens next. And that single realization is where real control begins.